You've probably not heard of the name Daniel Morgan before today, or you might faintly recall that it had something to do with an unsolved murder in London in the 1980s, a murky episode confined to a bygone era. But as today's frankly devastating report shows, it's so much more than that. Institutional corruption in the present, not just the past. That's the finding. It's a case which strikes at the very heart of policing and criminal justice system, the system we all rely upon to protect us and to ensure we're treated fairly, which is perhaps why we should all take an interest in this story. It's a story not just about the abuse of power, but about the arrogance of power and how that can also corrupt. Today's report isn't about who killed Daniel Morgan. It's about why, 34 years on, we're still not in a position to say who carried out that murder and why nobody has been brought to justice for it.
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name is Michelle, if you're new to this channel. I'm doing something different today. Normally I cover Chris Watts, although I do have a range of other cases that I've done kind of individual 1 or 2 videos on, so check out the playlists. Just go to my playlist section and you'll see all of that information there. So I have a playlist called Disturbing UK Crime. I'm from the UK, as you might be able to tell from my accent, and I have a few videos in that playlist. But this is amongst the most disturbing of cases, bar none. Because it's a tale of institutional corruption. The Metropolitan Police, the biggest police force in the UK, which covers London and the London area, have been shown categorically to have covered up so much. And a couple of days ago now, my time, I'm recording this on the 17th of June, so 2 days ago, a report came out. It beggars belief. Now, I haven't read the full report, but I'm going to cover this guy, Daniel Morgan. This is Daniel here. I want to give you an overview of what happened to Daniel, the tragedy of this case, and the fact that so many years later, no one has been brought to justice, yet there's been consistent covering up by the Metropolitan Police, which has now been proven. Now, what you saw at the beginning of this video is a part of a Channel 4 report on this. But the BBC have dug deep and I've found an interesting timeline. So this will help us understand exactly what has gone on in this case from day one all the way up to the present. So this is Daniel Morgan. On the 10th of March 1987, I was still at school then. I vaguely remember this case, actually. I have heard the name Daniel Morgan before, even if the vast majority of people watching this video will never have done. But Daniel Morgan's body was found. He was executed. He was found with an axe embedded in his head in a car park outside of the Golden Lion pub in Sydenham, which is in the south of England. On the 3rd of April 1987, 6 men were actually arrested over the murder. But after an investigation, the police found there wasn't enough evidence to charge any of them, which is fair enough, right? If the police have done an investigation and there's not enough evidence to take forward, the Crown Prosecution Service won't take it forward. It's as simple as that. But it's what's happened since that is shocking beyond belief, because if there's not enough evidence to charge them, that's one thing, but covering up and consistently covering up since 1987 is quite another. So we fast forward to April 1988 and there was an inquest and the coroner gave a verdict of unlawful killing. Papers were again submitted to the CPS, but no charges were brought. So they gave it another go at getting this evidence that they got against these men past the CPS. but still no charges were brought. In June 1988, the Metropolitan Police refers the case to the Police Complaints Authority, which is now the Independent Police Complaints Commission, after allegations were made against the police by Daniel Morgan's family. If there's anybody out there who doubts the sheer amount of work that Daniel Morgan's family have put into this, quite frankly, you have no heart, because they have fought tooth and nail to get Daniel's murder recognised and people brought to justice. The review by Hampshire Constabulary looked at the allegations that police were involved in the murder. So the police themselves were involved in the murder. That was the allegation. So another police force was brought in to investigate the Metropolitan Police. Then we fast forward to January 1989, and 3 people were then arrested. 2 of them were charged with murder and 1 for perverting the course of justice. In May 1989, the Director of Public Prosecution, so it went right up to the top guy, discontinued the proceedings. So they got 3 people, 2 of them were charged with murder and 1 perverting the course of justice in January. A few months later, that was quashed. Later on, the IPCC inquiry, so this was the inquiry that was investigated through Hampshire Police, concludes that there's no evidence to support any allegations of misconduct by Metropolitan Police officers. And then we have to fast forward 10 years to 1999. So this case just went into the doldrums. Those concerned wanted it brushed under the carpet. But in January 1999, a covert investigation, which was called Operation Two Bridges, finds information relevant to the case. Following the investigation, charges were brought in connection with an unrelated matter. So the plot thickens. 2 years after that, in 2001, another review by the Metropolitan Police's Murder Review Group finds new investigative opportunities and recommends the case should be reopened and reinvestigated. Almost another year forward, the Metropolitan Police launches a new covert investigation, Operation Abelhard. Police appeal for witnesses and information on the case on a TV programme that's run for many, many years called Crime Watch here in the UK. So there was an appeal for witnesses. So remember, this murder took place in March 1987. So the chances of bringing forward new witnesses at this juncture is virtually nil. So one has to beg the question whether they were just playing lip service to the investigation. That's just my opinion on that. October 2002 through to January 2003, 8 people were then arrested during this period, but all released on bail. In March 2003, shortly after these guys were released on bail, the Metropolitan Police submits evidence to the CPS for further consideration. Then, in September of that year, the CPS says there's insufficient evidence for a prosecution, and all people previously bailed are released. A case is referred to the Met's Murder Review Group again, which concludes that all lines of inquiry are exhausted. Let's just shut this down again. But then we fast forward another 3 years, almost 3 years, to March 2006, and another investigation, Operation Abelhard 2, begins. In August of that year, 2 men are arrested and bailed. And then in September, a 3rd man is arrested and bailed. I hope you're following this. This is why I'm using a timeline, because it beggars belief just how long and fraught this has been. Imagine being the family member and going through all of this. So in April 2008, we now get named people. James Cook and brothers Glenn and Gary Vian are charged with murder. 2 other men are arrested. This is William Rees, who was Daniel's business partner.
Rees has always maintained his innocence. He and others connected to the case spoke about the murder in a Channel 4 documentary last year.
There was no evidence ever of us being involved in the murder of Daniel Morgan. What's difficult about that?
Rees's ex-wife's brother, Glenn Vian, who died last year, had been accused of wielding the axe.
Wasn't there, didn't do it. I did not do it.
The case against the second man was later discontinued. A serving police constable is arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, and he's on bail.
The detective accused of actively undermining the first murder inquiry.
I'm the only person, me and the murderer, who know I wasn't involved.
September 2008, this PC's bail is cancelled and no further action is taken against him. Remember, he is a serving police constable. His arrest was not in connection with Mr. Morgan's murder, but in connection with the 5 other arrests. So what was he doing? Like slipping evidence under the desk and disposing of it? I don't know. But he's suspended from his job and due to face misconduct hearing, but he resigns before that. So again, the case against that person is discontinued because he's resigned. In December 2008, a 7th man is arrested on suspicion of attempting to pervert the course of justice, and he's on bail. Fast forward 6 months to June 2009, and a woman is then arrested and bailed on suspicion of conspiracy. November 2009, this is over 20 years later, right? This was 1987, so this is over 20 years later from the original murder. The woman is released with no further action taken. March 2010, William John Rees, James Cook, Glenn and Gary Vian are granted conditional bail pending a trial in November 2010. So these guys are going to trial eventually. And the judge imposes reporting restrictions on the case. So in the public, everything is quiet. The press are not allowed to report on it or anything. But then at some time, it becomes a little bit vague in 2010 due to this, restrictions on reporting on the case. But somewhere around mid-2010, James Cook is discharged. So we've now got the 3 guys, but James Cook is discharged. And then William John Rees and the Vian brothers are formally acquitted.
All were acquitted after the last of 5 investigations fell apart when a detective's probable prompting of a witness, as today's report puts it, was exposed in court.
The police and the Crown Prosecution Service in May 2012 are blamed. The trial just collapsed and these guys had to be acquitted. A report carried out by both the Metropolitan Police and the CPS said 3 boxes of potential evidence were not disclosed to the defence. So we've got major prosecutorial misconduct. 3 boxes of potential evidence. And there were several supergrass witnesses were not properly handled. So again, we're talking about police corruption. We're talking about institutional corruption, where just evidence is forgotten. It's been allowed to be brushed under the table. Boxes and boxes and boxes of this evidence. Then in May 2013, Home Secretary, as was then Theresa May, she later became Prime Minister, she's not anymore. Then Home Secretary Theresa May announces that an independent panel will be set up to examine the case. Then we jump forward 6 more years to July 2019. So these 3 guys are all awarded 6-figure sums in damages after successfully suing the Metropolitan Police for malicious prosecution. Rees and Glenn should get £155,000 and Gary should get £104,000. I don't know why there's a difference in the figures. But then that takes us to current, and in May 2021, the panel was due to publish its report, but it suffers delays due to the Home Office initially claiming no parliamentary time can be found to make the publication of this report possible, and then insisting it wishes to review the document and make redactations it seeks to be necessary. So I could speculate here there's been another attempt to get this quashed at the final hour, but the report has been published. So this is what the panel said about it.
From the Daniel Morgan panel comes one of the most shocking indictments yet of British policing.
The family of Daniel Morgan has suffered grievously as a consequence of the failure to bring his murderer or murderess to justice, the unwarranted assurances which they were given, the misinformation which was put into the public domain, and the denial of failings in the investigation. We believe that concealing or denying failings for the sake of an organisation's public image is dishonesty on the part of the organisation for reputational benefit. This constitutes a form of institutional corruption.
We've done a heck of a lot of work, effort, time over many, many years trying to get this out there. Now it's out there. Institutional corruption, I mean, that's not a very happy thing to have to tell the public of this country, but it's true.
So the Channel 4 report summarised this well. Here we go.
Well, this evening, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Cressida Dick, issued a statement saying it's a matter of great regret that no one's been brought to justice and that our mistakes have compounded the pain suffered by Daniel's family. For that, I apologise again now. But this is incredibly serious for Scotland Yard, and the panel was today asked whether there were any parallels with the Macpherson report, which found institutional racism in Scotland Yard after the murder of Stephen Lawrence. And the panel replied, there is an equivalence, yes. The chair said that there had been examples of excellent policing, but examples also of terrible policing, and that the legacy of previous corruption by police officers continues to have a harmful effect today. And alarm bells were being sounded about whether the Met is sufficiently resourced to tackle corruption, whether officers are being sufficiently vetted. Serious shortcomings still exist, we were told. And a whole host of recommendations have been made, among them that a statutory duty of candour be established, whereby all law enforcement agencies are legally obliged to be open and transparent and honest when being publicly scrutinised. I mean, what a damning indictment of this whole process this is. It is a deeply complex case, scandalous on many levels. We rely on the police to investigate on our behalf without, without fear or favour. But fear and favour run deep throughout the policing of this case. And isn't it extraordinary that those who have shown the most fearless willingness to combat wrongdoing and to investigate it are the families themselves who not only have been denied justice but have been treated appallingly throughout. And you're left to conclude that the Metropolitan Police, the biggest police force in the country, has everything to do now to persuade the public that it is fit to police themselves, let alone the rest of us.
But it's very interesting that Cressida Dick, even though 2 days ago she was seen to be apologising, is now a little bit reticent and is now possibly, I would argue, trying to spin the narrative in a different way. Because in fact now, reported by the BBC just 16 hours ago, as I record this, Cressida Dick, who is this woman here, denies institutional corruption. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner has rejected accusations the force is institutionally corrupt, following a report into the unsolved murder of Daniel Morgan. Dame Cressida Dick also said she did not obstruct work of the inquiry into the Morgan case. She herself has faced calls to resign after the publication of the report. So she's defending her own honour now. This is Daniel Morgan, as you can see him behind me, and he was actually a private investigator. And it's been argued that he was executed because he had information that would have maybe implicated some people in the police. And that's why there's been this big cover-up. That's the accusation. So private investigator Mr. Morgan was attacked with an axe, as was seen in a car park of a pub in South East London in 1987. And Cressida Dick, despite being apologetic to Channel 4 News, has hit back at the findings. Led by Baroness Nuala McClone, the panel found that the Met Police had just been protecting its own reputation above finding Mr. Morgan's killer. The panel's report said this: concealing or denying failings for the sake of organisation's public image is dishonesty on the part of the organisation for reputational benefit and constitutes a form of institutional corruption. The family, they've always said that this has been corrupt. They have fought so hard. Daniel's brother, Daniel's mother have fought so hard. His mother, unfortunately, died, I believe, about 4 years ago. But his brother is still carrying on this fight. And it's my opinion that this is not yet over. I think there's going to be more twists and turns in this case. Whilst the killers have walked free, whoever these killers are, have walked free since 1987. But the Met admitted in 2011 that there was a grossly inadequate first investigation, but yet still, when this case eventually did go to trial, it was found that boxes and boxes of evidence had not been given to the defence. So we've got a major case of prosecutorial misconduct. But in response, Dame Cressida Dick said, I don't believe we are institutionally corrupt. I don't accept that. I have deepest feeling for Daniel Morgan's family. They have shown extraordinarily grit and determination and courage. Yesterday, I apologised to them for our failings and the fact that we have not brought anybody to justice, despite 6 different investigations and countless other reviews and pieces of work. And for that fact, the Met, my force, of which I'm very proud, we have caused them extra anguish. But I don't accept we are institutionally corrupt. So she doesn't accept institutional corruption. She would say that, wouldn't she? Let me know what you think. Have you heard of this case? Is this case unusual in the fact that pieces of evidence, large pieces of evidence, have been shown to be hidden? Why would they do that? What purpose would it serve other than trying to cover up their own failings, protect certain officers who may have been involved? Who knows? You know, we can speculate till the cows come home about what has actually happened behind the scenes. But let me know what you think in the comments below. This has been a little bit different. Check out my other disturbing UK crimes in my playlist of that name. I've been Michelle. I hope you're well, and I'll see you very soon.